Welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast number 790. I'm Tom Cagley, your host. Today, we feature our interview with Stefan Wolpers. Stefan and I talked about the Scrum Master's role in the 21st century, his new book, The Scrum Anti-Patterns Guide. Buy a copy. And remembering that it's all about people. Stefan's bio. Embarking on a Scrum career unintentionally in 2006, Stefan was initiated as a Scrum Master for a small German startup, lacking initial knowledge but employing careful observation, note-taking, and dialogue. The author embraced the role and learned from the team's experiences. 18 years into a Scrum journey, Stefan maintains an unwavering appetite for learning, humbled by the vast knowledge shared within the Agile community. Recognizing newcomers' overwhelming challenges in this field due to scarce formal education, he aspires to provide guidance, emphasizing a pragmatic, common-sense approach grounded in observing human interaction and collaboration. Since 2019, Stefan has served as a professional Scrum trainer for Scrum.org. All Stefan's contact information is in the show notes. Are you ready to talk about people and Agile? It's time for the interview. Stefan Wolpers, welcome to the Software Process and Measurement Cast.
Tom, thanks a lot for having me.
I am really excited. I've read your stuff for a long time. It's provocative. There are a lot of interesting thoughts. I see that you have I see that you have a new book coming in terms of the Scrum Anti-Pattern Guide. Want to plug that right off the bat?
Yeah, I'm happy to. It's actually the series of blog posts I did when I was very frustrated a few years ago. And I took the time and with support from a few people at Scrum.org, we turned this into a real book. Basically we completely remade it, so I remade it. But it was really a fun exercise. I've never written a book before and it's amazing, totally amazing. Just one quick story. So imagine you write a book for the professional Scrum series. You would think that would be iterative and incremental, right? No. They wanted to have everything as a batch delivered, and my God, it was so bad, spent most of the first half of this year rewriting the whole thing. It was the fun part on the side.
I think I've said this on the podcast a number of times. I think everybody has at least one book in them. Given the amount of writing that you do, I suspect that you probably have more than one book in you. But it is sort of funny that it's a big batch delivery kind of thing.
Totally. I mean, publishing industry, they're, decades behind. I don't know how to say this differently. I mean, it's really, but it's, it was a very interesting learning. Now I know how it works and it's fascinating. I really start to enjoy this for a very simple reason. I mean, I write blog posts, for example, when I feel that a topic is pressing. So I don't care about SEO or maximizing blog traffic or whatnot. I just write for me. And if other people find this interesting, awesome, right? Be my guest. But for the first time, there was some sort of structure you had to go through. You had to really put thought into this. It was not just, starting to work and then do some Grammarly on top of it. So it's not that embarrassing. It's really thinking about, okay, how do I send the message? Who might be reading this thing? What is their intention, from reading this book? What is their return on investment here? So that was really an interesting, exercise. So I haven't had that since university and I was really saying, actually, it's not bad. You could get used to it. Oh, I don't know.
Yes, you could. Yes, you could. So January, I think, is going to be a marvelous month. You'll have a new book out. I'll have a new book out, or my co-author and I will have a new book out. So, it's going to be super. You do write blog posts that sort of, they might be topical to you, but they catch my eye. And so while when I proposed this, I was going down one path. Yesterday, across my bow came this article about saying no from a product owner's point of view. And I'm a big fan of the word no. At least that's what my children told me. But, it is a method, and it's probably an important method to actually keep a team sane or keep an organization sane in terms of actually keeping in control of the work intake. Do you see the skill of saying no just something that a product owner has to wrestle with?
I think it should be everyone's capability of doing that, because it's an essential part of how we communicate among humans. So my idea always is that the trash bin is your friend, and this is just the physical manifestation of saying no, because most of the time people call me as, Stefan, can you have a look at this team? They're really struggling. Could you probably help them? I always start with some sort of forensic backlog analysis. And in 85% of all cases, the first thing you see is it's a humongous backlog. And a lot of the stuff in there is completely out of date, useless. It's just noise. And I always ask myself, okay, how can this be? How can they accumulate all this crap in their product backlog? Which is supposed to represent the best use of our team's time at any given moment, right? And I think most of that we end up with the question: okay, do you say no? And if so, how do you do so? Are you burning bridges, or are you a transparent individual feeling empathy for the one who's asking you a question that you have to turn down? I mean, I've never met a team that's not drowning in requirements, suggestions, ideas, whatnot. It never happens.
Well, not only is it doesn't happen now, and people go, well, the world is so much more dynamic now. I'm sorry, I've been at this for a little while. It has always been like this. So why isn't no part of the vocabulary? At least here in the States, no is not generally a good career move to use.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. It might have career limiting potential, right? Depending on who you are talking to. And this is just a manifestation of the old ways and systems we are still operating in, and we are trying to tackle complex problems with. And most of those have their roots back in the early 20th century, and they do not work. If you have a more traditionally oriented organization and someone asks you, someone who's paying for your project, for example, because they contribute their budget to your team's requirements, and you tell them, no, we're not going to do this, they will be upset. It's my budget. You don't tell me how I spend this. This idea that your team is not tasked with solving your customers' problems, in the best possible way for everyone involved, but somehow an entity that you can hire by transferring budget, right? And this hasn't changed for 20, 30 years. No matter how hard the Agile Manifesto is trying to change that, it's still in a lot of companies that is the norm. And you have to be very careful. I mean, I spend a lot of time in startups, particularly fast-growing startups. And it's always the same, if the founder says something, you do this. I don't know why, but somehow that individual has so much respect and so much potential power that you cannot just say no. It's a stupid idea. And I think this traditional way of communicating, of reflecting hierarchy within the conversation, is really damaging the outcome.
So when you take a look at a backlog, whether it's a team or a whole program or a whole product, and you notice that it's 4 or 5 miles long. I have a friend, Alan Kelly, over in the UK, that says that basically every some period of time that you ought to, quote unquote, nuke your backlog.
Mm-hmm.
People put things on backlogs. They're in essence making a tacit promise. Because they can't say, or they don't feel like they're going to say no. What damage does that actually do? Isn't that just, well, I'll just put it on the backlog, and that's really code for I'm never going to do this.
Yeah, of course, it's a quick fix. However, it has a potential of creating a lot of collateral damage in the long run. Well, first of all, if I'm told don't worry, it's in the backlog as a stakeholder, I believe, okay, now they start to work on this. Maybe not now, but maybe in a few minutes or weeks, whatever. But then they notice my requirement or my suggestion or something like that. And if then nothing happens, people get frustrated. So what about my requirement? I said, yeah, some things are more important at the moment, but we're on it, promised, And the longer you drag out this conversation and not making a decision, not being explicit and being candid about it, we won't do this, period, the more frustrated the other party gets. And the more damaging it is to your reputation. The product backlog is really not a good place for policy. This is it's an artifact that serves a very specific purpose and none other. You need to keep these policy thoughts out of it. It's really not a good idea. What I suggest, for example, is that you try to be as transparent as a team as possible. Create a process that everyone understands how stuff gets into the product backlog. Filter it, for example, by your current product goal or your product vision or whatever that is. Think about creating a backlog of ideas that you believe have potential, contributing to creating value, aligning with the current product goal, for example. Once you have these set of hypotheses, you run experiments. You try to falsify falsify the hypothesis or validate them. And if you validate them, okay, then we're moving a step closer to being transferred into the product backlog. But even if you're in the product backlog, it does not mean that something will be built. You're just closer to realization. First it will probably be refined, and then you have to think about this, and maybe it aligns or is necessary to accomplish a certain business objective for a sprint, and then it will be picked during sprint planning, and then the team will start working on them, but then it's still not delivered. We're inching forward to the realization of this task, of this job, of this requirement. But it's only at the end that okay, now I know it has come to life because it will be shipped. Until then, you're just moving closer. Probability is increasing, but there's no certainty. And this is what you have to make transparent, how this works. So everyone understands it. No one feels frustrated if you tell them at a certain moment, right now, this is not helpful, but we keep it in mind. This keeping in mind, I have another bucket that I call it the anti-product backlog. Stuff that is not useful at the moment, but might be at a later stage.
How long does something have to stay on the anti-product backlog before it gets chopped off?
It's a good question. It really depends. So something that has no chance of ever getting touched, I would outright say so. Mr. Senior VP, whatever, this is simply not part of what we do here. If the second cousin of the third wife of our CEO believes that the button needs to be green, and it's not aligning with our goals as a team, we won't do it, period, no matter who makes the suggestion. And you need to apply radical candor to the issue, right? Like be straight. No, we won't do this because of A, B, and C. People will understand.
Really? I
Yes.
sometimes when I have that conversation with folks, they say, Tom, you have privilege. You are a consultant from outside. People listen to you. I don't have that power. Therefore, I have to do what I'm told to do. They've given up their ability to sort of change their world around them. It's sort of almost a learned helplessness kind of thing in many organizations. So what advice would you give to those who don't feel that that's within their power to actually be candid?
Good question. Depends
other than get a new job, but
yeah, of course, that is that is the simple way out. I mean, the question is whether saying no is the hill you choose to die on or not, given your corporate career in that organization. And no one can make that decision for you. You have to do it yourself. It really depends. I fired myself from many jobs, because, okay, I can't contribute anything here. I just leave, which, by the way, always leaves behind puzzled people, My goodness, everything is working, aren't we paying enough? And said, no, everything is fine. I like it here, but I can't contribute to the further progress here. So I'm moving on. This is not my kind of job. But of course, I'm privileged. I'm a bachelor. I don't have kids. I don't have a dog. No spouse. No nothing. I can afford to say, okay, if I'm not paid the next 3 months, it's fine with me, right? That is out of reach for a lot of people, and I can fully understand this. Someone says to me, say, I have to pay a mortgage and put my kid through college. I fully understand that they say, okay, I'm done here changing this whole thing. I just do my job, what they pay me for, and I'm fine with that, right? So it's really the question: in what position are you? What kind of organization are you facing? What is your future? What was the idea of your future life, professional life? Where do you want to be? Is it helpful that you start a conflict here over this topic, or is it not? And if you start it, is there even a small chance that you will be, I wouldn't say victorious, but that you maybe come to a draw or something like that, but you will not outright fail?
Yeah, I think
because what I've seen also, just to close the thought here, that many people who try to change the organization from within quickly burn out, and because constantly run into walls, and it's always the good people who leave first.
I think that's something that many organizations really do need, and especially if you are in a change organization, need to recognize, and that is you do lose the best first, because they have options. It's the ones that don't have options that hang. Obviously, sometimes it's a matter of applying energy to something. You're probably not trying to win the battle, perhaps, but to change the course of the entirety of the transformation. We're a couple of decades into this whole Agile thing, at least the named part of it. I mean, you look at the pieces parts, they go back and have roots even further back. Have we reached maximum Agile? Have we hit the tipping point and we should start to look for whatever the next big wave is going to be? Maybe AI as, the transformation agent?
A very difficult question. Honestly, I don't know. Because so on the one side, yes, Agile is omnipresent, whatever, it's already been capitalized, so it needs to have some importance. A lot of people make a lot of money off it, think of SAFE. I mean, it starts with the acronym. It's marketing genius. I totally admit that, and it's a very lucrative business model. Although on the other hand, it causes a lot of collateral damage, right? So, for example, that I'm convinced about this. The reason that Scrum Masters and product owners are always confined to tactical roles at a team level is one of those collateral damages that SAFE caused. When I started with Scrum 10 years ago, it wasn't that case. So people were more interested in thinking about, okay, what is the framework telling us? And should we listen to this? And that's the reason why we have cross-functional self-managing teams, because then they can actually solve the customer problem and they do not work as an internal agency, so that we become a real product team in the Marty Kagan sense of the word. So on the other side, what you see now is, you see job advertisement for junior Scrum Master, and all of a sudden say, what is that? I mean, if you want to be good at your job, you need to really have a lot of experience, And not just in creating products in a broader sense, but also in how to deal with people, how to talk to people, how to see, how to recognize what is going wrong, identifying who might be helpful in creating a remedy for that issue, etc. RPP. And now it's just an entry-level job in some sort of career path, that is accompanied by trainings and certifications. This couldn't have been the intention of the gentleman who created the Agile Manifesto.
No, I don't think it was. But it's funny having lived through a number of different waves. SPaMCAST was one case, that kind of stuff. You get this commercialization of the market, and that helps drive it, right? That you have all of these people in the commercial side outselling the idea of Agile, SPaMCAST, whatever was before that, right, to the executives, so that there's this pull up. And so therefore it energizes the market for some period of time. And then that flattens out. And obviously all these firms are looking for greater growth. And so they start looking for something else, and it sort of, levels out or does something else. How many people do you see working with the, SPaMCAST these days? How many times has that organization been bought and sold? At one point it was, part of academia, and now it's been bought and sold to a number of different, standards organizations. I think at some point things do, and they need some reinvigoration, whether it's changing Scrum, changing Extreme, changing something to catch people's eyes and ears so that it stops being. I agree. What is a junior Scrum Master? What's a junior coach? I mean, you see all of these things. What's a junior coach? It's like, okay, I'm going to have somebody help me learn to do something, be better at it, and know how to do it. That's a junior coach. Okay, well, how does that work in the marketplace? As people who are thought leaders, you are, a thought leader. How do you, what advice would you give to the market? If you could give advice to the market, what would you tell them to get them back on track?
Back to the roots. Figure out the essence. What is the original thought behind all of this? So I do believe that it is helpful if you trust the people closest to the problem with helping to solve it. Because they typically know the situation best, what is happening when, where, and how to deal with that. And giving them a voice and starting to make decisions in a more collaborative way is certainly helpful in that respect. So that would be my approach. It's certainly not new. I mean, it's somehow part of whatever framework you look at, but it's rarely acted upon as it should be.
Why?
You believe that a lot of organizations who claim they're agile are paying lip service to the whole thing. Because they believe it's an advantage in the job market, attracting talent, or they believe, okay, if we're not saying this, no one will join us, So that is certainly one point. At the other level, there are so much people are invested in their career, in their career equity that they build over years or decades. They will find it very, very hard to fully embrace this idea. This stepping aside and let other people do this stuff, that you have to report to your superiors, and leaving you out of the, let's get my hand dirty scenario here. So that's a typical problem, I believe. And that's also got something to do with many organizations' idea of, how progress works, how career is made in the organization, what the culture is. So as a member of the leadership team, you have to lead and show the way and tell other people how things are done. It's a funny story. I studied chemistry a long time ago. And so we was early first semester. So I asked one of my professors why we would do these things here. So really basic work, very primitive equipment, etc. Pay. And he told me, this is very simple. No matter when some of your assistants later will talk to you, you need to be able to show them how to do their work better. And I thought to myself, how is that supposed to work? If someone is really a specialist in doing one task, how am I supposed as a superior, as someone from the leadership level to show that individual how they can do their job better? It's like this old Bruce Lee quote, I don't fear the man who trained 10,000 different ways, I fear the man who trained one way 10,000 times. And I said, this can't be true. I mean, why not ask these people how to do this best and then provide some feedback, from the perspective, how can I possibly contribute to making this better? But not assuming that I'm the one who's actually capable of creating the best outcome right away, because I won't be. But this requires some insight in yourself, you quit the path of hubris, so I don't know whether I understand agility or agile. I've been dabbling with this for 17, 18 years, and there's still so much to learn, and I figure out new things every single day. And it never stops, which from my perspective is awesome because I like it that way.
I 100% agree. If you don't learn something, why get up out of bed? At least that's my philosophy. Are we really, in terms of whether it's agility or helping organizations get out of their own way in some cases, are we really dealing with techniques or are we dealing with human nature?
We spend much time in big five consultancies, but I had a stint of, I think, 18 months or so. And there was one thing that I really took away from it. It's always humans. And if you have that perspective, a lot of things become easier because most of the time it is humans. And we are very strange creatures. So we have a very special OS. And it's often fear-driven or greed-driven. We're very strange creatures. And I started to think about whether there's something like free will. Are we really fully in control in what we do? Because sometimes I always believe I'm sitting somewhere watching other people play, and one of the chaps on the playing field is me. And I try to understand what I'm doing. And this makes everything so complicated and so fascinating at the same time. That's why this job never gets old. And that's also the reason why, for example, I like to do writing these blog posts, or I just started creating my first online class. So I did another experiment. So I don't know how that will end and whether I will ever ship it. But, it's very interesting, how to, I wouldn't say spoil other people's mind, but how to make them think about different perspectives. I like this idea that you can't reach the brain through the ears. People have to experience it themselves. And to get them into that state, they really need to be, interested or becoming interested in some things. And I like to help them achieve that state.
I think that's a profound statement. Where'd you come down on free will? Does it exist?
I have no idea.
And the reason I ask is that at the bottom of on my iPhone, there's this little blurb from, a news feed, and I have never clicked it, and I'm going to at some point, that some Stanford researcher has spent, the past 50 years working in brain in that area, in that kind of study, and has come to the determination that there is no such thing as free will. So it's as you were going through that, it's like, I wonder if you'd actually read that, and we could, you could tell me whether or not it would be a good read. So I guess I'm going to still have to go off and read that at some point.
Yeah. It's just observing myself and other people.
Yeah.
I mean, I've made so many mistakes in my life. that in retrospect, I do not understand. What was the rationale to make that decision? And I sometimes can't come up with one. And this, by the way, we're typically very good. We make decisions somehow, and then we rationalize them later on. But in these cases, I have no idea. So who knows?
I think, well, to be honest with you, one of the most important pieces of learning that I ended up my multiple universities was a number of classes on sociology. And I think that has paid off, the whole understanding of at least group, or at least, some dabbling in the idea of group has paid off multiple times over and over, at least thinking about that. We are an interesting species. Stefan, this has been marvelous. If you woke up tomorrow morning, somebody handed you a cup of caffeinated beverage, whatever your choice of caffeinated beverage is, and a magic wand, and we could have an argument about why anyone would be handing you a magic wand in the morning, and 2 wishes to solve any 2 things impacting the world of agility, what would those 2 wishes be and why?
Number 1, for everyone involved, would be become comfortable with stating, I don't know. That is really helpful. And number 2 is something I already mentioned. Trust the people closest to the problem with helping to solve it. So that would be my 2 pitches I would make.
Those are definitely powerful wishes. At this point, Stefan, how would people continue the conversation? How would they find you on the internet? How would they find out about your new book?
Actually, you can Google me and I pop up there. But
very close, almost the top of the list. No, matter of fact, almost. It is the top of the list.
If you Google Scrum Anti-Patterns, I by all means show up because I think I've occupied that niche for me. Even Google recognizes that.
Well, obviously, we'll have that in the show notes. Would you like to take a few minutes to promote anything you'd like? The platform is yours. You've educated the software process and SPaMCAST listeners. The platform is yours to promote anything you'd like.
I don't know necessarily. I mean, I think the book is quite decent. Again, it's not a cookbook, not a recipe. It's not intended to provide checklists to solve your organizational problems. This is not the case. It's more kind of educational journey. It's more about if you observe something, try to understand what you're observing. There's always a reason why things are the way they are. And before you start acting upon them, first understand those reasons. What might be the background of this? Why are people behaving this way? And then think about, okay, how can we probably be helpful to remedy the situation that we have here to support other people? Don't jump to conclusion, and please don't sell the top 5 tools that you have in your toolbox that you apply to whatever crosses your way. Because life is so much more colorful, and problems are the same.
As I said, this has been absolutely marvelous. I was looking forward to this as I took a vacation in Iceland for 3 weeks, and actually chatted with my wife about that we were going to have this conversation. Stefan, thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with you again in the near future.
It will be a pleasure, Tom. Thanks a lot for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Mastering Work Intake from Chaos to Predictable Delivery has published. Jeremy and I have been humbled by the reaction of the community to the book. Regardless of whether you're creating, enhancing, or maintaining software products, work intake is a challenge you deal with constantly. We're here with this book to help you get in control of work entry. Remember, mastering work intake involves recognizing that it's easy to say yes and much harder to say no. Links in the show notes to buy a copy of the book. We look forward to the conversation and your opinion on the book. In Reread Saturday News, we continue with Chapter 4 of Actionable Agile Metrics, Volume 2, Advanced Topics in Predictability. This is the second part of the process behaviors chapter. Humans often fall prey to seeing trends where they don't exist. Today, we construct an XMR chart, a process behavior chart, to begin to fix that failing. Links in the show notes to this week's Reread Saturday entry and all previous. In the next Software Process and Measurement Cast, number 791, we will complete year 17 with our interview with Vinny Gill. Vinny and I talked about conferences and staying connected within the Agile community. A great way to complete year 17. If process improvement is a never-ending journey, why do so many people ask, are we there yet?